Join your host, Maddie Roche, as she brings you into a community of fee-only financial advisors who are successfully building profitable businesses that serve the next generation of clients. Learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your best life and help your clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello, and welcome to XYPN Radio. I'm Maddie Roche, your host. And today's episode is episode 333. Today, I have Cynthia Meyer, a CFP, a CFA, and an XYPN member, who is the owner and founder of Real Life Planning, a fee-only firm dedicated to supporting real estate investors. Today's podcast is so informative. Cynthia shares her expertise with real estate and how she's been able to create a service model that has allowed her to scale to 50 clients in her first 3 years. We talk about everything from the real estate bubble to using her campaign management experience in her business today. Cynthia exudes enthusiasm for her work, her clients, and her niche, and it is contagious. Cynthia is also a power user of the XYPN network and has effectively launched a highly productive real estate investment study group and a community within the XYPN membership. And today she talks all about how giving back that way has given her so much value in return. If you're interested in real estate as an asset class and how to serve clients who do too, then this show is for you. A firm isn't a firm without clients. As the Chief Marketing Officer of your RIA, the most important job you have is guiding prospects through your marketing funnel and converting them to clients. If your funnel has a leak, you could be spinning your wheels and missing opportunities. Mapping your funnel is the first step towards developing an effective marketing strategy and a valuable tool for evaluating the health of an existing one. Download our free template and map your funnel at xyplanningnetwork.com/funnel. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Hello, Cynthia. Welcome to XYPN Radio. How are you?
Hello, Maddie. I'm great. Thank you. It's a wonderful day in central New Jersey here, and we are starting to have some spring. So
well,
I'm in
welcome
favor.
To spring. Good. So glad to have you on, Cynthia. You've been such a fabulous XYPN member. And I'm really interested and excited to introduce you to our listeners who may not have had the opportunity to cross paths with you yet. So Cynthia, I'll let you do the honors. Please introduce yourself and your firm.
Okay, great. Well, hey, everyone. I'm Cynthia Meyer, and I'm the founder of Real Life Planning, which is a financial planning firm, a virtual financial planning firm that works with real estate investors, in particular, rental and vacation property investors, all types of real estate investors. And what we do, I like to call financial mentorship. So this is a combination of financial planning and real estate business coaching. And I work with folks who are in the building stage, right? So maybe they have some rental properties, but they're looking to get to where they have enough doors so they can be work optional, preferably sometime earlier than the typical retirement age.
Wow. I've already got questions just based off of what you said, but let's give the listeners a little perspective. When did you launch? How many clients are you serving currently?
Sure. Well, after our pre-conversation the other day, I actually went and looked it up. And so since we have been in business, we've served 62 clients. Some of those were projects. So right now we just signed number 50. So in terms of the long-term planning clients, yeah.
Oh, what a threshold. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. And what year did you launch?
So I joined XYPN in 2019 and I launched went live on the website and started taking clients that I wasn't related to in December of 2019. And then I had already picked the niche that I wanted to serve, and I had already put up the website and all that sort of thing. But originally, I was leading with something called house hacking. I don't know. Are you familiar with that term?
No, please.
So house hacking is when you buy a multi-unit property and live in one unit and rent out the other ones. Or in what I like to call house hacking 2.0 is when you use a home that you already own and monetize it in some way. Like perhaps you take roommates, or you list it on Airbnb for the weekend, or you rent out your garage or RV parking or something like that. And so I developed this whole campaign around house hacking 2.0, which was, basically letting other people in your house. And then, of course, the pandemic. So I had to, right away, I had to take that down, and I had to pivot and rethink how I was going to get new clients initially. So,
wow. And I love your niche so much. And it's feels more specific than most niches that we hear on the podcast. I'm interested, how did you know that this was an area that clients needed help with? Sure.
Well, it seemed to me like the great blue ocean to me, if you've ever read that book, The Blue Ocean Strategy. So I've been a financial planner for a long time. So I could have worked with different types of people. When I first started my career, I was in the Bay Area of California, working mostly with people who had equity compensation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I thought about doing that again. I thought about working with people who were expats, right? Because I'd been an expat for a while. I thought about working with women, particular women business owners. But I really settled on the real estate investor clientele because I didn't think anyone was serving them. I had built a rental property company with my husband during the Great Recession, and we were sort of self-educated first generation real estate investors. And, financial planners just didn't know that much about it in general, unless they had a family background in real estate investing. And I thought that there was a need. And I was happy to find out that, in fact, there is a need, and there's lots of room for growth in this niche.
Totally.
I think lots of people who are not well served by the financial services industry right now.
Absolutely. And by nature of the technicalities that you have to coach on around this, that it's really specific to types of financial decisions versus maybe a psychographic niche of an individual or a professional niche of an individual.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're right on target with that, Maddie. And real estate is owning direct properties in real estate investing, let's say owning a rental property, for example, it bears more in common with other types of small businesses than it does with securities investing. I mean, you have this large, expensive, illiquid asset. It has carrying costs that you may have to pay if revenue goes down, right? If people aren't paying you rent. And it's not like you can just turn around and bring it back to Walmart, right? Like once you buy it, you've got it for a while. So a certified financial planner is actually pretty well positioned to, especially a fiduciary, to bring an unbiased perspective to that relationship. But a lot of folks just don't know much about real estate investing beyond buying their own house. And the comp model up until now really favored the AUM model, which isn't. It's possible. It's definitely possible to serve real estate investors with that model, but they are particularly well served with the fee for service model, right? Where people are paying you directly for advice and coaching, and the asset management piece is a little bit more secondary.
I'm so interested in that. And I'm wondering, when you say that there's room for growth in this area of the niche, is that because a lot of real estate investment people are do-it-yourselfers, or have they sought financial advice and just not finding it? What are you sensing among the people looking for this support?
Sure. Well, first, finding a financial planner who is fee only, which, thanks in large part to XYPN, and NAPFA, consumers know to look now for a fee only financial planner. Like it's definitely a part of personal finance journalism, right, to speak about that. So, but finding a fee only planner that is real estate savvy is pretty challenging. Of course, the best place to go is to the XY Planning Network, find an advisor tool. And not only will you find me, but you'll find several other people in the XY Planning Network who have really great planners and have, lots of things to say. And some who have niches a little bit different than mine, like maybe in vacation properties or commercial real estate. And so it's hard to find somebody. If you just Google it, right, it's hard to find somebody, who meets all those criteria. There's a lot of interest in real estate right now. And I think what we're seeing is just like we saw, maybe 20 years ago, we saw this trend towards people moving towards low cost index portfolios and away from active management to being more asset allocation and index driven. We are also seeing this younger generation of folks, people, kind of like 50 and under, who are much more comfortable with real estate as an asset class. Mm-hmm. Now, they may have more friends who own real estate. They watch HGTV and, the DIY network, or I guess it's called the Magnolia Network now. So they've seen all real estate as entertainment, and they think, gosh, that looks like fun, and it looks like it's profitable. So that people want to get into it. That there was a bank rate study, for example, a couple of years ago, which said that 38% of millennial respondents thought that real estate was the best choice as a growth asset. And, wow. 20 years ago, that answer unequivocally would have been securities, right? So, so there's really a mind shift, right? It's a perspective change.
Yeah. What do you think caused that perspective change?
Oh, good question. I think part of it is, as I mentioned, it's just, real estate investors are more visible in media. Right. Yeah. So with social media, with cable, there are more visible real estate investors, and they've become entertainers. Right. Mm. Whereas, maybe 1 or 2 generations back, even with the CNBC generation, people had think Jim Cramer, right? Like the sort of securities investor celebrity. Right. But now there are real estate investor celebrities, and that certainly helps.
Totally. I speak from experience that mm-hmm. I feel like everyone in my peer group is talking about mm-hmm. real estate and what they're doing with it, and if they can even get into the game of it. Mm-hmm. I know the entry point still seems inaccessible to a lot of my peers, quite frankly, given just the shift in the past couple of years we've seen with the market with real estate.
Sure. I mean, it's hard. It's in many metro areas. It's like the Bozeman area, for example. It takes a lot to get into a first home. You're competing with investors who might be able to buy in cash, right? And some of those are institutional investors. If getting into the first home is the first hurdle, and then getting into the first rental property is like the next big step up. And then once people get into the first property, then over time, if you're saving your net rents, it's not as hard to get into more, right? Yeah. So it's those first 2 hurdles that are the hardest ones.
Mm, okay. Yeah. I'm interested, Cynthia, in your background. You're so well-spoken and up to date with your current endeavor of serving this clientele, but what were you doing before this?
So right before I launched my own firm, I was working in financial wellness programs. So I worked for a company called Financial Finesse, which for people in the employee benefit space will be familiar with it. It's one of the leaders in corporate financial wellness programs. So I was delivering these programs to large companies, mostly Fortune 1000 companies, and I would talk and meet with everyone from, the person who had, 10,000 options to exercise to the person who was at risk of being evicted. Right. So it was really, I've been a financial planner for a long time, but it was really a boot camp on, just really drastically expanding, the scope of folks that I would talk to. And as part of that engagement, I worked there for about 4 years. And as part of that, I was on the think tank, the Financial Wellness Think Tank, and we did a lot of research because we collected a lot of data anonymously. So we did a lot of research about financial trends, employee financial trends. And that's kind of informed my work now too, in terms of, how I approach people and how I've tried to set up the financial planning process in the firm.
In what ways?
Well, I think one of the biggest ways is that I think in many ways, even though I've been a financial planner for a long time, that the traditional model of financial planning, where the planner tells the client what to do, is not, in the long run, is not the most effective method. I think if clients don't make their own wise, convicted, comfortable financial decisions, if they don't own it, if you will, right, it's not going to happen. right? So you can have the most beautiful recommendations possible, but if you don't have good coaching skills as a financial planner, stuff's not going to get done, right? And so I think working, in the serious boot camp of financial wellness to really hone my personal coaching skills was super helpful, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why I was so interested in working with real estate investors, because it's an aggressively DIY group of people, right? It is that having that coaching background, like kind of that marriage of financial planning and financial wellness and financial coaching. And that's what I just decided to describe it as financial mentorship, right? So I will try and coach a client through the decision-making process, through the process of, buying a property or selling a property or deciding what to do to improve profitability in their real estate business, as well as the other financial planning elements, right? But ultimately, the client is the person that owns the outcome. And so I will give advice. Obviously, I'll give advice when it's needed, but I'm hoping to take the client through a process where they are gaining their own equilibrium, right? Where they become more and more confident over time in the financial decisions that they're making about their growing their real estate business.
Beautiful. Could you give us a summary of your service model and your fees?
Oh, sure. So I have a subscription model, and there is an upfront initial financial planning process that everybody shares, right? So the first 3 months or so, 3 to 4 months or so, there's an initial financial assessment that goes through all the moving parts of people's financial life, right? And I have a systematized process. That's going to take anywhere the typical engagement is going to be somewhere between 5 and 8 initial meetings, where we're going to take people through the process of, getting organized, defining the dream, looking at their current financial picture, right? If nothing changed, if they did nothing differently, like how close are they to getting to their goals? Exploring possibilities, right? All the different possibilities. That's the super fun part, right? Doing a securities portfolio review, incorporating a rental property business review, assuming that they own those properties already, taking other special things, right? Like say if somebody has stock options to exercise or equity comp to review. And then at the end of that process, we're going to look at, what are the next actions and priorities to work together, some in the short run, some in the parking lot for later, and some, kind of in the holding area for somewhere down the road when it's time to get to them, when the most important things have been addressed. And so once that initial planning process is finished, then clients can take 2 paths. Those people who have a lot of active things happening in their financial life choose something called LIFT. And the LIFT is ongoing financial planning with optional investment management for those people who are not DIY securities investors. And I have a calendar, right? So there's a theme for every month. We do tax planning and investment planning. We revisit the retirement projection once a year. We're going to do, review the rental property business twice a year, as some examples. So we're going to touch on every piece of their financial plan throughout the year. Wow. We're going to do a lot of business coaching in that process. Not everybody needs that level of intense interaction. And so for those folks, I also have a financial coaching service, which is called Launch. And that's basically a quarterly coaching call, which is very client driven in terms of what they want to talk about. So that is that is the sort of less expensive alternative for people who are well served with the initial financial planning process, but they want to have something to talk to over time.
Wow, fabulous. What do you think do you know your breakdown between those 2 service models?
So interestingly, it's about half and half. So it's about half and half. And when I originally put this together, and I'm sure you've had plenty of people on that have expressed how they've iterated over time, right, as their firm grew. I originally thought that the Launch service would kind of be aimed at the early career folks who are just getting started, right? But interestingly, there has been some feedback from really experienced real estate investors who are validators, right? They want to go through that initial financial planning process. They'd like to have somebody to talk to you once in a while, but they don't necessarily, need ongoing help every month. And interestingly, there are some people who are relatively early career, but they're very high earners, and they do want to talk to somebody every month. So the mix being 50-50 actually surprised me a little bit.
Wow.
If you'd asked me 2 years ago, I wouldn't have expected that.
Oh, I'm so glad. Have you had to evolve the price point you started at originally?
Yeah, of course, but doesn't everybody, right?
Yeah, that's the point.
What I did over time was I kind of expanded the ranges of what I could charge people to try and incorporate kind of more of the scenarios that I was thinking and to account for complexity in the initial planning process. So I expanded the range of that. I also expanded the fees a little bit on the financial coaching service.
Wonderful. Oh, what a fun firm, Cynthia. I love hearing about.
I'm having a great time.
I bet you seem it. You seem it. And we'll get into it in a little bit about how you brought that energy to your peers and this network. But let's go back in time just a little bit. I imagine you had a very successful career. You've talked a bit about it. What made you think I want to go at it alone?
Well, good question. So, I've had my own business before. And so before I went to work in financial wellness, I was teaching financial workshops and teaching some other things and working on the real estate business for a while. We had been expatriated for a while, as I mentioned before, and we had come back to the United States. And I guess I'm just really entrepreneurial, Maddie. I've spent most of my adult life working for myself. I did have a long period of time when I first started in financial planning. I worked for Merrill Lynch and had a nice career there, but then left my team when my husband got an offer overseas that was kind of too good to pass up. So, I like building stuff. I like building stuff. And so, as the company I was working with, which again, wonderful business, it just started to get larger and larger and felt like it was time to go start something new.
Wow. Beautiful. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
What would you say is different between the clients that you're serving versus maybe just the average client that other advisors would end up serving? You mentioned that they're very do-it-yourself. That really stood out to me from our last conversation, but experience-wise and their understanding of things, how does that change as you serve them?
Sure. So a couple of things in terms of my client base, a couple of things that folks generally have in common. So the first is that in terms of the saving outside their retirement accounts, they prefer real estate as an asset class, right? So folks they're maxed out their 401ks and their IRAs, right? But when it comes to investing outside of their retirement accounts, they really do prefer real estate as an asset class, right? So they're real estate people. The second thing is that generally, even though people that I work with are generally, most folks are professionals building a significant real estate side hustle, and about 20% are what you might call professional real estate investors.
Oh, okay.
But in general, even those folks who are happy in their careers and trying to build a nice real estate portfolio on the side, they all say things like, I just like to have the option, to leave corporate America if I wanted to, right? That doesn't mean they have the intention to do that. It just means they're trying to build financial independence for themselves and for their family, right? So they love the idea of, maybe having, 10 or 12 doors, right? Or door is a unit where that would give them enough to pay their living expenses, right?
Wow.
If they needed to. Yeah. And then I would say the other difference is that many of them are securities investors, right? But they really, they're fee sensitive. They're not generally active managers, or they like to do it themselves, right? They like to do it themselves. So they're looking for planning help, not so much to tell them what to do with their securities portfolio, but to talk about all these other pieces in their financial life. Like, how does the real estate impact the other parts of their financial plan?
I love that. I would assume that most advisors are working with clients who have some real estate, whether it just be their primary residence or
sure,
other.
Yeah.
But how does that advice shift from the advice you're giving your clients around how to consider real estate as what you really talk about as being an asset class?
Sure. So a couple of thoughts there. One is that a lot of times I talk to people who have had conversations with other financial planners who have tried to talk them out of owning their rental properties. Now, hopefully nobody at XY would do that, but just, they've had, their person right at their firm for a while, and that person keeps telling them, oh, you should sell your rental property and put it in, some diversified securities portfolio. And general, for most people that they're not super happy with that, you wouldn't tell somebody that owned some other kind of small business, right, that they had to sell their business and put in the stock, right? So I would say that for the planner who, the typical planner is going to have some people in their practice who own rental real estate or who want to own rental real estate. And one of the things that I've been talking about with my colleague Scott Jensen with Renovate Financial Planning, who he and I started the little micro community, the real estate study group within the XY Planning Network. And so we've been working on continuing education for those folks, right? And so we're rolling it out hopefully by the end of the quarter, where people can get just a basic foundation in the financial planning issues that for serving somebody who owns rental or vacation property. And so hopefully we can do our part, right, to help broaden that knowledge from a financial planning perspective.
Yeah. Great. I was just going to ask you what can advisors do for continuing education around this?
Well, hopefully I'll have an answer that I have some place that I can point you to very soon because we've been working very hard on it. But in the meantime, if you're a member of the XY Planning Network, the first thing that you can do is come to the real estate study group. We have a really robust real estate study group, and we meet once a month on the fourth Tuesday from 9 to 10:30 Mountain Time. And if you're an XY member and you're listening, you can just ping me on community and we will add you to the group. So, having that kind of community within the larger community of XY of folks who are either serving this niche, or maybe they just have rental property themselves, or they're real estate curious, right? And want to know more about what are the financial implications of doing that, and how does this affect all the other parts of my financial life, right? And so learning from each other, right? That's the best thing.
Totally. I want to go back to why advisors may encourage clients to sell rental properties. And I of course, am not a financial planner, and I can sense that, as fiduciaries, you can't say, sell it so your assets go up and things like that. But is there a bias towards real estate as being an asset class that we're working through, or what is keeping advisors from really embracing this as a way to develop wealth?
Yeah. And so, I'll definitely give people the benefit of the doubt here. I think it's because one, it's not really in the CFP curriculum. First of all, it was, real estate was I have my CFA charter as well. And it was in the part of the CFA curriculum, but more from an analysis, and valuation point of view. And so I think unless you grew up with a real estate investor background, even if you had a whole career as a financial planner, of course you have clients that have rental properties, but if you're in a bigger firm, your compliance officer is probably telling you you can't give any guidance about them, right? So you've got some compliance restrictions around that if you're in a big firm. And you just might not have personal experience with it, but you do have personal experience maybe with success on the securities part of the spectrum. And so people just do what they know.
Yeah, I was wondering, I worked some of my way through the CFP curriculum, and there was no mention of real estate as.
I mean, there's some about, buying your first home, and some of that applies to buying your first rental property, but like there's a whole element of like tax facts that are important to know in the real estate space. It's a much more tax focused financial planning engagement than the typical financial planning engagement.
Wow. You mentioned compliance. And I know that just recently we had our compliance teammates on that real estate study group meeting.
Oh, it's so helpful. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. What compliance considerations do you have to take into consideration when you work with this niche?
Sure. So think about it from the standpoint of as a fiduciary advisor, right? So somebody that is in the XY Planning Network or thinking about joining the XY Planning Network, you have a responsibility to give guidance that is in the best interest of your clients. So first of all, making sure if you're giving that guidance, right, you should know a little bit about what you're talking about. And that knowing that owning investment property is a large, expensive, illiquid investment, right? So making sure somebody is really well prepared before they get started or before they buy that next property, right? Ample cash reserves for the down payment, for your insurance deductibles, for, up to a year's rent if there's a vacancy, right? The biggest risks in real estate are really when you're first getting started, right? So if you have one vacancy in your one single family home, right, it could ruin you, right? So you have to be super careful. You have to be prepared. But we're talking about compliance. Sorry, to dive away from that.
No, I love it.
The other thing is to disclose the risks. Right. Real estate has unique risks and it's important. So the liquidity is one, right? But it's important to disclose the unique risks, especially to the new real estate investor who doesn't know them. And then the other thing is to be really clear about what you do and what you don't do. I mean, those of us who work as real estate financial planners, we're not the realtor, right? We are not making a particular recommendation about buying a particular property in a particular location. What we are doing is giving people feedback and guidance and a process for evaluating whether the property makes financial sense in the context of that client's overall picture, big financial picture.
Wow.
Right. So documenting all that, right? Making sure that you have a clear process that you've got to disclose where, if there are any conflict of interest, like if your client wants to invest in a shopping mall in which you are also invested, right? You have to disclose that.
Interesting.
And then, Travis Johnson, the compliance director who was on the call with us in our study group the other day, also really talked us through a lot of other things to think about, like, from a business management point of view, like what goes in your agreement, what,
right.
Are there different ways that you might keep records, for example? So it was really wonderful. And, we decided as a group that we need to have compliance back every year before ADV season. So
yes.
Yeah.
No, I that visit and your passion around this and your leadership around it and from the network perspective has really opened some doors for us internally to talk about how do we want to support these groups that are popping up that are focused on specific niches and to include compliance as such a natural, easy, beautiful movement. And Travis Johnson also found it totally valuable. So
that's
really, really glad to have had that happen.
Yeah.
I'm interested as you talk about risk. What is the current state? And maybe this is a selfish question, but I hear a lot of people talking about, are we entering into another bubble? I mean, you mentioned the Bozeman real estate market, but I feel like the real estate market is popping. How do you navigate that?
So that's a great question. And I get this question every day from clients and prospective clients. So you are wise to ask it. So, I think what matters the most is your particular numbers on a particular deal, right?
Beautiful.
So just like looking way back to the .com bubble, I mean, I am sure that there's some, it's feeling pretty bubblicious in general. And traditional ratios where investors might look for a particular ratio in their financial analysis, right? And we're seeing less, it's harder and harder to find now, right? So one of the things to put in context here, right, is we've got the shortage in the country, this big gap between people who want to buy homes and homes that are available in the starter category, right? So the number, I think there's 6.8 million households, household formations, if you will, right? More than there are new houses to buy. So, and that's not a problem that's going to resolve itself super quickly, right? And that is a huge contributor to these inflation numbers that we've been seeing. 40% of the core CPI is driven by what's called rent and what is assumed to be the rent of a homeowner's property, right? So owner assumed rent, I think it's called. And so when there aren't enough, people are coupling up and they're having families, they want to move to a good school district and get in their first home, right? And there aren't enough of those homes to buy. So they're staying in rentals. So there's more demand for the rentals, right? So prices are going up in both ends. And, even with rising rates, there's still going to be that upward pressure on that. So for the real estate investor, right, the important thing is to look at their bottom line. Real estate, as we mentioned, rental property has carrying costs. You have to pay the property taxes, you have to pay the mortgage, you have to pay it when the wash machine breaks, you got to pay the utilities if nobody's in it. So it has substantial carrying costs. So the cash flow, ideally it's going to cover those carrying costs, and it's going to give you a small to medium-sized profit before the depreciation expense. And so it's harder to look, right? Like you just have to look harder and not get caught up in the idea of, well, I'm just going to buy it because it might appreciate, right?
Right.
Because you got to have positive cash flow.
Interesting. Oh, so fascinating.
I guess I should get off my soapbox here now, but
no, I have 10 questions I could ask you all about that stuff. But from our listeners' perspective, the folks who are likely a majority we know are listening here that are thinking about launching their firm in the next 1 to 5 years. I've had a number of members get on the podcast and start with that they'd listen to every episode of XYPN Radio. So let's talk directly to the folks who are thinking about starting their firms. How did you go about marketing to this niche, given that it's not just this like professional niche like doctors or veterinarians? How did you begin to get known in the space?
Sure. So I had a little bit of an advantage in that I had been speaking to reporters on the record for many, many years, right? So I've had lots of, press quotes that I could link on my website, for example, which helps with SEO, search engine optimization. But I think the most important thing, whether you're looking to work with real estate investors or dentists or, newly divorced moms, like whatever the niche is, right? Whatever it is to get super, super crystal clear about who you want to serve. What is the change you hope to make for those types of clients, and how you propose to make that change? And so doing the work on the front end, and I'm really evangelistic about this, right? Is I think that it's really important in this era, right, to be able to, one, connect your work to your values, right? So how do you want to be of service in the world? And to differentiate yourself between other people who do something similar. Because everybody has a tribe of folks that they could work with, right? You can only work with so many people directly as a financial planner, right? And so you're not really in competition with anybody but yourself.
I've always heard of that, who is it that you want to help? Yeah. But the language you just used, what's the change you want to make with them? That's so beautiful. What is the change you want to make with your clients?
Yeah. So what is the change that I want to make with my clients? I want my clients to grow their real estate portfolios so that if they ever want to step away from the workforce, right, they have the financial means to do so, right? So I help them, have enough in money, assets, and income coming in that they could be work optional.
Oh, listeners, take that advice. Really, really beautiful. As you think about kind of having built your firm, what would you credit to some of your early success? I mean, it's not every day that advisors say that they're serving 50 clients after 3 years of being in business as they launched during COVID. What do you really credit? I mean, you so clearly are an expert in the space. You clearly have professional background in this arena, but what do you think really it takes to be someone who can effectively build a business like this?
Sure. So I would say it's especially for those folks who haven't been in business for themselves before, is, again, getting super clear on who you want to serve and how you want to serve them, right? In a way that's connected to your own life story, right? Like you have to use your life to pay it forward, to help, influence and coach and advise others. And so I think what happens sometimes, and again, I've been in, a financial planner since the mid 1990s. What happens sometimes is that people think, oh, I'm just going to work with, folks of a certain net worth, right? And that doesn't help, right?
No.
That doesn't help you build a business. Getting super clear on, okay, I've got these unique talents and skills in my life. I like to work with this particular kind of people. I mean, what kind of person you want to talk to every day? Because you're going to talk to 10 of them a week, right? So it should be people you like.
Totally.
Yeah. And spending time in the beginning, figuring that out and getting super crystal clear about it before, it doesn't have to be a forever decision, right? But it should be a for now decision, right? And then your clients will eventually, if you go look for a certain type of client and then you start to get some, right? That relationship is reciprocal, right? What they need will eventually inform exactly how you do it and, whether you niche down even further.
Totally. Some of our guests cite internal referrals as being the main source for new clients. And we often see as advisors kind of get to that level of client numbers that they do see internal referrals come up. Are you seeing that in this niche?
I definitely see internal referrals. I have been trying to build a network of people that can also help clients who need them, like, a 1031 exchange intermediary or a real estate savvy, CPA, investment savvy realtors in different markets where I have a lot of clients, right? So, networking with other professionals who serve a similar type of person is also very helpful, I think.
Beautiful. Would you say you're happier now running this business than you have been in your former business owning life of yours?
Yeah, I really am. I'm much. And I think I told you when I was younger, I worked in politics for a while. That was my first career. And I was a political campaign manager in the Democratic Party. And I left in the mid 1990s and then became a financial planner. And, I feel much, much happier doing this.
Wow.
Much happier doing this. Yeah.
How do you think being a political campaign manager has helped you become a better financial planner?
Sure. Well, I think one, I learned how to be really clear about message, right?
Yes.
To be really clear about message, and to figure out sort of who I needed to talk to and who weren't my people, so to speak, right? So who weren't persuadable. So certainly that approaching it from a strategic perspective has helped, inform my business life going forward. And I think it's also, I miss the kind of like large volunteer organization that was politics. I don't miss the nastiness of it, of political campaigns, of political advertising. I don't miss that at all. I regret participating in it, but the volunteer recruitment part, I just loved. And I think that, in every position that I've had since then, like I always find a way to incorporate that into what I'm doing. And so I think that's why, I like our real estate study group so much, right? Like, I just like getting people together to talk to each other. It's super fun.
Well, I'm interested. I mean, you're so motivated by that group, and it sounds, and I know firsthand that you're giving so much value to that group. And what do you get back from having organized something like that?
Well, so gosh, I mean, so many things, right? The fact, this started just as a conversation between two of us, right? Between myself and Scott Jensen. And then, we invited some people, and then like 20 people showed up, and then we started just sharing best practices with each other. Scott and I have launched this whole continuing education idea. We got some other planners in the group involved. And so we're really trying to develop some standards around best practices for serving, for serving this particular client niche, and really trying to impact and influence the profession, right? So that we can kind of pay it forward a little bit, beyond, just our own individual businesses.
Beautiful. What a great, great thoughts around how giving back actually returns so much more tenfold, to us. So good on you.
There's so many, I've met so many awesome and inspirational planners in the XY Planning Network. And I know I sound like a walking commercial for you guys, right? Because I'm sort of your biggest fangirl. But, I've been a financial planner for a really long time, and I have all these credentials, and I still learn something from somebody every single day. I have the mastermind that, your colleague Cassie set me up with, right? I learn something from them every week. Go on the Facebook page, and there's always something that somebody says. I'm like, oh gosh, I never thought about it that way. That's really interesting. Like people are really great about sharing their knowledge in a collaborative way. And so it's a nice, when you start a business, it can be really lonely. You feel like you're the only one. And to be able to go in the XY community page or go in the Facebook group and just say, hey, I got this, I'm chewing on this. I'm not sure really what I should do about it. What does the hive mind think? And getting all these different answers, it's so helpful knowing that all these other people have gone through it at the same time. Can really help, in the beginning. It can really, really help.
Oh, I love that so much, Cynthia. So much. What's the future of real life planning?
Okay. So the near future or the far future?
Let's start with short and then the long future.
So in the short future, I'm kind of reaching to the point where I'm making some scaling decisions, right? And I already work with a virtual assistant, but I'm just percolating on making my first hire. Right. So kind of at that point, in the long run, if I had to guess, like if we were talking 5 years from now, I would say probably what we have is some kind of larger boutique firm, or maybe a network of individual firms who have come together to share services. So we can leverage the sort of team approach, right? Where, you have different specialties and different things. And I had a really nice high performance team when I was back, on the Maryland side many years ago. And, there's having a team is really great for clients, right? So in the long run, that's my goal, is to have a team or teams within the firm, right? Who service teams who are helping clients with multiple things.
Beautiful.
No.
I can see it. That's exciting.
Yeah. And then I hope to roll out lots of courses, right? Content and courses in the long run, as we get to the point where, we're more about, we're not growing, we're not spending most of our time with new clients, but we're spending more time with existing clients. I'm looking to expand the ways that we can educate and serve them.
Beautiful. Cynthia, this industry is so lucky to have you, and XY is so lucky to have you as a representative. And I feel so lucky to have talked with you today about this.
I'm so lucky that you had me on.
Of course, you just exude passion and competence, and you're what every advisor should strive to be. So, Cynthia, congratulations on what you've built and the impact you're having all around you, whether you hear it or not. I know that you have impacted our community so much. So, thank you very much. And listeners, take Cynthia up on her offer and check out our website and look at some of the things she's building. And if you join XY, take her up on that offer to join our incredible real estate study group. Any final words of wisdom, Cynthia, to the ears of the future advisors?
So you are what you focus on, right? So when you are thinking about whether or not you want to go out on your own, focusing on preparation, right? Getting really clear about who you want to serve and what is the change you want to happen for them. And when you're on your own, focusing on, just the daily actions you have to take to start building your pipeline, right? And the other stuff will take care of itself eventually.
Really good advice. Cynthia, thank you so much for being on XYPN Radio.
Thanks for having me, Maddie.
A firm isn't a firm without clients. As the Chief Marketing Officer of your RIA, the most important job you have is guiding prospects through your marketing funnel and converting them to clients. If your funnel has a leak, you could be spinning your wheels and missing opportunities. Mapping your funnel is the first step towards developing an effective marketing strategy and a valuable tool for evaluating the health of an existing one. Download our free template and map your funnel at xyplanningnetwork.com/funnel. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN Radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You are not alone and you are not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm, and that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.